Everybody to the April 2019 SHAC in Action webinar. This month our topic is Wellness Policies One-on-One, and we're so happy to have all of you here. As we get started, just a few housekeeping items. First, my name is Ashley Hearn, and I am the Build Healthier Program Coordinator with It's Time Texas. To get started, just a few housekeeping items. First of all attendees will be muted for the webinar. If you have any questions, you can submit those via the chat function. And if you chat those to all panelists, we'll be able to view those and respond. The webinar is being recorded. We will be sending a link to the video and slides after the webinar is completed. And if you are attending for CEU credits, you can email webinar@itstimetexas.org and we will be able to get those certificates to you. The SHAC in Action webinar is brought to you by Texas Action for Healthy Kids, and the steering committee is made up of a variety of partners, which you can see here. Today we have representatives from Texas Department of Agriculture, It's Time Texas, and Texas Action for Healthy Kids on the webinar. And now I will go ahead and turn the time over to Michelle Smith from Texas Action for Healthy Kids.
Thanks, Ashley, and thanks everybody for joining us this morning. I'm Michelle Smith. I'm the state coordinator for Action for Healthy Kids here in Texas. Just a little bit real quickly about Action for Healthy Kids. We've been around since the early 2000s when David Satcher declared the obesity epidemic that we are still dealing with. We work together with schools and provide grants for breakfast and physical activity and other nutrition programs. We also provide technical assistance, webinars, workshops around wellness policies and school health advisory councils to support schools in making a healthier environment. One of the things that we focused specifically on over the years is making the connection between health and academics. We have learned, and there's research that shows that students who are nourished, students who are active, will do better in school. They have fewer behavior problems, they attend more school, and they do better on test scores. So we spent a lot of time putting together information on that and have some documents called the Learning Connection on our website. One of the things that we focused on over the years has been coordinated school health. Those are the 8 components that the Center for Disease Control put together many years ago, really, and those 8 components have led us to work in the areas of nutrition education, parent and community involvement, health education, physical education, counseling, staff wellness, health services, and a healthy, safe, and school environment. And the school health advisory councils can work and address issues in all of these areas. Now, there is a new model in place. ASCD got together with the Center for Disease Control and developed a new model called the Whole School, Whole Community, Whole Child back in 2014. This was to allow to basically expand 2 categories. The family community involvement are now 2 separate components to bring more emphasis to both of their different areas of work. It also put the child in the middle and identified the things that a child needs to be successful. They need to feel safe, healthy, they need to be challenged, they need to feel supported, and they need to be engaged. So taking and building on what was already there in the coordinated school health model, the whole school, whole community, whole child model was born. It's a great way to think about your school health initiatives and a good way to look at where you may need to focus on for improvement. So we've worked in Texas on a state level to pass legislation around most of these areas of issues as they relate to schools and try to strengthen our work at the district level as well. Another mandate in Texas is that we have school health advisory councils at a district level. Originally, they were considered the group that had had input with the district on sex ed, but over the past 20 years, we've evolved those councils to be more focused on everything that relates to student health. Just what is a SHAC? In Texas, the School Health Advisory Council is mandated by state law, as I mentioned. It's also mandated that they be appointed by the school board. So the members of the SHAC are not elected or by the district, they're actually appointed by the school board. And they're viewed as the voice for parents and community in anything that has to do with student health. They are a great way to share the importance of health to your ISD or your school district, as well as the school board. As I mentioned, they review health curriculum. There's also other mandates for SHACs. In Texas, they must review and recommend on recess policy. They must also review and recommend on joint use agreements so that our schools are working towards more of a community engagement. It doesn't mean that these recommendations have to be accepted to the board, but the Schools Advisory Council plays a really good role in bringing forth issues and bringing forth expertise around different topic areas that relate to student health. Other laws that are in place as far as Texas Schools Advisory Councils, when we formed these councils, it was a concern that the district might have undue influence if they were led by district personnel. So we went back to the legislature, and now it's mandatory that a chair or co-chair of a Schools Advisory Council be a parent. And to take it a step further, we asked that the composition of the SHAC be 50% or more parents who were not employed by the district. We actually had district people who were leading SHACs come to us and say, I'm not comfortable because I can't necessarily go against what the district wants. So that was something that we fixed. There are other laws. They must report to the school board at least once annually. That way we're making sure that what the Schools Advisory Council is working on is getting in front of the board. They're required to meet at least 4 times a year. And there has to be a minimum of 5 members on a School Health Advisory Council so that there is a little bit of input there. We have other recommendations and guidelines that have been developed over time with different ones of our partners. For one thing, the Department of State Health Services has a SHAC guide, which is posted on their website. I think they were updating it this year, so there may be a new one out in the near future. But it will give you all of the laws as well as a lot of good guidelines to follow with your SHACs. The Texas Education Agency also has information around school health. You can find the different laws and rules on their website. It's Time Texas has a Schools Advisory Council page on their website, which has links to all of these and other things. So it's a good place for you to go. And then as far as policy resources, TASB has just launched a new interactive school policy database where you can go and see what different states have on the books around school health policy. It's a great resource. Then CDC has the Healthy Youth website, which gives you more information on whole child. The Rudd Center has WellSat, which is a tool that can help you review your wellness policy and determine if it's where you may need to expend some additional effort. And then as far as the actual campuses and implementation, the Center for Disease Control has what's called the School Health Index, and that is something you can use to determine how well the policy is being implemented on your campuses. So this is a lot real quickly because the main reason we're on this call today is to talk about wellness policies, which are the documents that guide your LEA, your local education agency or school district efforts around school health. As I mentioned, the wellness policies are developed and implemented by a group which basically conforms to our School Health Advisory Council. So although the wellness team or the group that reviews your wellness policies in other states may be called different things, In Texas, since the School Health Advisory Council is already in place, it's the recommended group that works on wellness policies in our state. So I'm going to turn this over to our Department of Agriculture, who has worked with us and worked with all the partners over the years around wellness policies, and they're going to share some information on wellness policies and some tools and things that they have. So Helenka?
Thank you so much, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for attending this webinar to learn more about local wellness policies. My name is Helenka Ostrum, and I am with my colleague, Jennifer Page. We are from the Texas Department of Agriculture, also known as TDA, with the Food and Nutrition Division. The Texas Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Division administers 12 federal child and special nutrition programs for the state of Texas, including the School Breakfast Program, National School Lunch Program, and the Summer Meals Program. TDA supports providers of nutrition assistance by helping ensure accountability and the efficient use of taxpayer dollars to nourish Texans in need. These nutrition programs exemplify eating right for Texans of every age and background and help them build a bridge to success. TDA's vision is to be a global example of excellence and empowerment in providing nutrition assistance. TDA's mission is feeding the hungry and promoting healthy lifestyles. To give some background, TDA facilitates a local wellness policy advisory committee comprised of state stakeholders, such as organizations, state agencies, universities, and local school districts. The goal of this committee is to provide resources and support to local education agencies or school districts for developing and implementing impactful and sustainable local wellness policies. One objective of the committee is to provide local education agencies with resources, training, best practices, and implementation strategies for local wellness policies and implementation plans. Now I'm going to review a few of our objectives. Throughout the session, the following topics will be covered: the requirements of the local wellness policy, how to transition from a local wellness policy to an implementation plan, and TDA food and nutrition resources. Now, there are a few key years that have shaped local wellness policy requirements. In 2004, the local school wellness policy requirement was established. In 2010, the Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act strengthened wellness policy requirements and improved transparency to the public on school wellness policy content and the implementation of wellness plans. In 2016, USDA released final guidance for wellness policies. The final summary of the rule can be accessed by the link on this slide. Now, what is a local wellness policy? I want you all to think for a few minutes about what your definition would be for a local wellness policy. For the purpose of the presentation today and providing a clear definition, I would like to share USDA's definition of a local wellness policy. A local wellness policy is a written document of official policies that guide a local education agency, LEA, or school district's efforts to establish a school environment that promotes students' health, well-being, and ability to learn by supporting healthy eating and physical activity. Now, after hearing this definition, think about what a local wellness policy means to you in your school. School districts or local education agencies that participate in the National School Lunch Program or School Breakfast Program must have a local wellness policy. The local wellness policy document must be approved by the school board or governing board. In the state of Texas, the Texas Department of Agriculture reviews local wellness policies every 3 years during the School Food Authority administrative reviews. One key point to note is that though a local wellness policy must follow federal and state standards, school districts have the option to develop stricter guidelines in their local wellness policy. Examples of some restrictions are schools can restrict the sale of sugary beverages on campus, and they could also limit the number of food fundraisers. The local wellness policy document outlines what the school policies are at the district level. This document identifies the following topics: nutrition promotion, nutrition education, physical activity, school-based activities that promote student wellness, and food and beverage marketing. The local wellness policy contains goals that the school district will strive to complete at the district level. Now we'll move on and talk about an implementation plan. The implementation plan describes how the local education agency will implement the written policy. The implementation plan should be focused on the local level at the campus level, and it should be updated to meet emerging needs and priorities of the community, in addition to addressing any local, state, or federal requirements. This slide breaks down wellness implementation plans further. Wellness implementation plans can be developed for the entire school district, or they can be unique to each individual school. School size and resources available can determine if the district has one wellness plan or unique plans for each school. The wellness plan also includes descriptive objectives, action items, timelines, and measures of success that explain the wellness policy's broad goals. They are also customizable to each school's available resources and needs, and this allows for some more creative implementation. And then the plan is approved by the respective school administration. And we should note, implementation plans have that local campus emphasis and are really creative and innovative with activities that start small and grow over time. This slide features a document that was created by TDA in partnership with the Local Wellness Policy Advisory Committee. It is available on TDA's Food and Nutrition website, which is the link available here, squaremeals.org/local wellness policies. This document defines local wellness policy and implementation plan, as well as identifies differences between those two documents. On the second page, it describes how to transition from a local wellness policy to a wellness implementation plan by engaging youth, parents, community members, and school personnel. As you all know, effective partnerships and collaboration between the School Health Advisory Committee, school administration, and stakeholders are necessary to ensure the district is building a cohesive school health environment that incorporates local community values. On the back of this page, we also have an example of a wellness implementation plan outline. And this walks you through what a proposed goal would be. The goal would be the goal that's featured in your local wellness policy. And then an example of an objective that would be in the wellness implementation plan. And then that objective is followed by action steps to achieve the objective, school and community stakeholders that would need to be included when accomplishing this objective, any resources required, and then outlining measures of success as well. The Texas Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition website, squaremeals.org/local wellness policy, also contains additional resources. On the website, you will find a description of local wellness policy requirements and resources from TDA. TDA provides local education agencies with the Administrator's Reference Manual, we refer to this as the ARM, and a local wellness policy checklist to assist during the implementation of the local wellness policy goals and objectives. In Texas, the local wellness policy checklist is not a required component during the development of the wellness policy or implementation plan. However, the checklist can be used as a resource during the creation of the wellness policy and implementation plan to ensure that the local wellness policy contains the required content. This webpage also provides links to partner resources that support the development of local wellness policies and implementation plans. We hope that you find these resources useful. If you have suggestions for future resources that would support the development of local wellness policies and implementation plans, please email me at helenka.ostrum@texasagriculture.gov. Thank you.
Okay, we've got, just in case you haven't noticed, we are on a new webinar service. We were using GoToMeeting and we are now using Zoom. So the same, some of the same features are there. If you have questions, please enter them in the chat or the Q&A box. We will have time at the end to answer questions. Thank you, Helenka, for sharing your information on the wellness policies. As I mentioned, I think we have attendees from other states, and this does focus on Texas since it is presented from Texas Action for Healthy Kids. So some of the things may or may not relate to your states. Please, if you have questions, we can answer some of those, or you will have contacts in your states with Action for Healthy Kids that may be able to answer as well. So I'd like to turn this over now to John Adams from El Paso ISD, so he can share a little bit about their school district's work on wellness policies and through SHACs.
Good morning. How's everybody today? As Michelle said, my name is John Adams. I'm the Director of Health, Wellness, and Physical Education, and one of my roles as a central office employee is to facilitate our school health advisory councils and help them with whatever they need us to do to make their meetings go effectively. So we've done a little bit of work on policy here in the recent past, and currently are working on some other policy work, and I want to share a little bit of those experiences with you. So one of the things that's very important when it comes to policy is figuring out there's so much out there that could be addressed through policy. And if you take a big snapshot and say, wow, we're going to do all this stuff, it's going to be very overwhelming. So what you really want to do is look at what's important to your community or your district or your campus by using some wellness or health inventories that are out there to kind of show, okay, where are some of those gaps that we might have? What do we already have in place? What areas do we really want to look at? And then pick one or two of those areas at a time and address those. Now, when it comes to wellness policies overall, you can address a lot of those in the policies. So we're going to talk more about that in a second with the worksheet. But you really want to look at what are your community's needs and what areas, again, do you want to identify. As Michelle said, these SHACs are parent and community driven, but it's important to have at least a small number, if you can, of district personnel, and not just central office personnel, but campus personnel, because those people can be your champions for you. When you ask questions or you have concerns about something, it's good to have campus personnel who can say, hey, you know what, this is how it's going to impact us. So it's nice to have those people available. When I was an assistant principal, I sat on our district SHAC, and sometimes things would come up, and I would raise my hand and say, wait a minute though, how are we as a campus going to implement that, or maybe there's some misinformation. We can say, whoa, wait a minute, that's not really happening on our campuses. I know it may seem like that, but this is really what's happening there. So it's important to have those folks on board as well. So TASB has a worksheet out there. Right now, it's not currently available because I believe it's being updated. There is a worksheet that they provide that helps go through that process. So many of the areas that need to be addressed in your wellness policy are on that worksheet. So really, what you need to look at is where you fall in those areas. A lot of them have options, like they'll give you the verbiage for certain areas. And we're going to take a look at an example here in a second, but you can either choose the verbiage as the state kind of drives that process, or you can say, you know what, our district chooses to go in a different direction, and this is what we're going to put instead. So you have those options on the worksheet, and it really makes it very easy for you to develop, or at least easier for you to develop that district wellness policy, because the worksheet drives the process for you. So as far as the process goes, though, it's the way we did it was we just found a word version of an existing policy, and then we just kind of cut and pasted the items right off of that worksheet onto that Word document. And then we just changed the FFA logo, for example. We just changed all that information before we submitted it to our legal counsel for review, and then on the TASB for their final recommendation. So it was just easier for us to take an existing policy because it's already formatted for you than to have to recreate the whole document. The language is already there in the workshop in the worksheet for you. So here's the sample of on your left, you can see a couple of examples of the worksheet itself. And you can see, it says option 1 under suggested policy text. It talks about developing implementation and review and guidelines. You can see right in the worksheet, it's already written there for you. And then over on the far left, you either check option 1, option 2, or the district has their own language there. So that's really where you start. It guides you through the entire process. So then you can see over there on the right, you can see a copy of our policy. If you look in that very first box on the left, the development, implementation, and review, that's the first subheading there. And then on the right, it's the actual verbiage that our district chose to keep from the TASB worksheet on their policy document there. So it just cut and pasted it, dropped it right into the policy there, and made it very easy. And the next one is another example further down the document where it says wellness plan. Again, it says wellness plan there at the top, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those options. You either take it exactly as it is and you check the appropriate box, or maybe there's a couple of things there, that your district's not going to be able to do at this time, or maybe you do some things differently. You want to change that particular piece, then you just change what you want, note that on the worksheet, and then kind of paste it into your document. It makes it much easier to try to navigate that. So a couple of things to consider. Once the decision has been established, it's important that you make clear what is your intended outcome. So, you want to make sure that you have more restrictions on school day snacks, or you want a dedicated recess time. You need to make sure that that's clear in your verbiage that that's what you want. So I'll give you an example. In our wellness policy, we have recess before lunch. But in order to accommodate certain campuses that may not have the infrastructure to do that, there was a piece in there that said when possible. So it was, campuses will provide lunch prior to recess when possible. So I think the original intent for that was before my time here, but what I understand from it was the original intent of that was there may be some campuses who just don't have either the personnel, or maybe their cafeteria is too small to accommodate that. So they wanted to allow them an opportunity to say, well, when appropriate, or when possible, as a way to address that. Well, what it turns out is principals, in a lot of cases, would use that as, well, it's not possible for us. So it created a gray area. So you want to make sure the clarity is there. What is it exactly that you want that policy to state? Another one too, we're currently working right now with the wellness, with the recess policy. We're moving our recess policy from our wellness policy to a standalone recess policy. And we just reviewed it with our attorneys last week. And one of the things it talked about is students shall participate in recess activities during that dedicated time. So we were concerned that what if a kid chooses not to do that? Now, a teacher or an administrator can't make a student, for example, stay inside at lunchtime for disciplinary reasons or to work on work. We wanted to address that for sure. We didn't want kids being pulled from recess for academic reasons. But a parent had a concern that, well, what if my child just wants to sit under a tree and read a book? Are they going to have to participate? Well, the law says shall. So shall means they shall participate in recess and in physical activity specifically. So we might have to go back and look at that a little bit more closely to see what exactly do we want that. We don't want those unintended consequences. So again, also think about what will be the responsibility of the school district or the campus. You know, you don't want to create something that's a financial burden on a campus or on a district. We have to be very careful with that in policy. And overall, will they be able, it's great to have a policy, but if the policy is so constricting that campuses cannot possibly follow it, then you've created a problem for yourself. So you want to make sure that you understand the responsibility of the district and the campus in supporting that policy. And again, the TASB worksheet is very helpful in helping you guide those questions to get through that process. So research is important. A lot of times when we present our policies after the fact, a lot of people will say, well, where is this coming from? So it's very helpful to be able to say, well, we have research that shows that this particular policy or the reasons why we made these particular recommendations is backed by research. And so it's nice to have that. And it also makes it easier when that policy goes to the board. You know, you'll have some board members that are very savvy, and they're going to ask some questions. And if you can say, well, the research says this, or the research says that, or, you know, this has been effective in other districts who have a very similar policy. So if you have that data with you and it's readily available, that's really going to help drive that process and again, support that intended outcome. Also, make sure that that research is valid research and not just somebody's opinion about something. Sometimes we think we might know something, and we probably do, but if we can't back that up with some tangible research or at least some data, it could cause some problems, because then you know, you have the issue of, well, this person says this person says that. It's very important to have that data. Again, I'll share with you another little bit of information. When we first started our recess policy years ago, the recess before lunch issue was a pretty hot button issue for several reasons. And one of the things that came up was the hand washing piece. If kids have been outside playing and now they're going to come into the cafeteria and eat their lunch, how do we address that? And so it turns out there was a couple of physicians on our SHAC at that time who could not come to an agreement on being able to wash hands. One physician says, no, you know what, hand sanitizer is just fine. You know, it's very effective. You know, if you're using hand sanitizer on the students as they come in, that's fine. The other doctor was very adamant that no, hand sanitizer is only effective when you wash first and then you sanitize. So we were trying to figure out, well, why are these two physicians having such different input on that particular piece? Well, it turns out the doctor who was very adamant about hand washing and sanitizing, turns out he was a surgeon. So his level of cleanliness was much, much higher than the general practicing physician. And so they kind of at some point came to a consensus, and they were able to go ahead and support the policy with just the hand sanitizing. But those kinds of things, you know, it's very important that those conflicts are hashed out in those SHAC meetings until you can reach, you know, a pretty good conclusion. So also one thing I want to talk about too, in terms of this kind of stuff, is make sure conflict of interest are always a concern. If there might be one, just put it out there early. Don't hide it. And I'll give you another example. 2 years ago, we had a person on our SHAC who came forward with a very, very serious concern about the use of Clorox wipes in the classroom. It's one of the things that teachers started asking for at the beginning of the school year. You know, every kid needs to bring 2 boxes of tissues, 2 bottles of hand sanitizer, a thing of Clorox wipes or wipes or some kind of other, cleaning apparatus type of things. And so she has some concerns about that, rightfully so, because if you read the box of those containers, it does say to use a rubber glove or protection when using those kinds of items. They should not be in the hands of students, so students shouldn't be cleaning their own desks, for example. So all that was very, very good information. So as they went through the process, and the SHAC was really looking at passing a policy to, for lack of a better word, ban that particular product, some people started asking questions about, well, if we ban that, what are some alternatives? And it turns out that the person who was pushing that particular policy said, oh, well, it just so happens my husband has this company, and they develop these reusable wash towels that they can be used in schools. And because that came out so late in the process, it turned a lot of the SHAC members the wrong way. And they're like, you know what, we're done. This is all, obviously you're trying to pad your business or whatever. And I don't think initially that was her intent. I think that she brought some very valuable information to the table. But as soon as it came out that her husband has this new product that kind of came out in the end, it kind of squished that particular process. So just be careful of those kinds of things, because those things can happen. Buy-in is another important piece that we really have to take a look at. Again, make sure you have those decision makers involved in the process. Now, they shouldn't be driving the process. The parent should be, but it's always good to have those people in the room so you can ask questions about what needs to happen. I'll give you another example. As we were passing our recess policy, or as we were developing that recess policy just this school year, our SHAC chair, right towards maybe in the middle of the process, as we were talking about what's going to be the impact of having this recess policy, because it was moving it out of our wellness policy to a standalone policy. It became a little bit more restricted than what it originally was. And he was concerned about, well, what's going to be the impact on the school? What are the teachers, how do the teachers feel about this? And he actually asked in the SHAC meeting, are there any teachers from this district in the room right now? And actually, there were about 5 or 6 of them that raised their hand and said, yes, we teach in the district. And so we asked them directly, is it something good for your kids? Is it going to cause a problem for you guys? Is it going to create any issues that you might be concerned about? And so they were able to answer those questions, and they were all, in this particular case, very supportive of that. But just the fact that they were in the room and he was able to ask them that question directly, rather than us having to say, okay, you know what, we'll go back, we'll talk to some teachers, get some information, we'll bring it back to our next SHAC meeting next month. He was able to ask those questions of those people right at that time. He was able to get a good feel from them how they felt about it. And so it just really helped that process. So having those decision makers, and really even just the personnel in the room, to be able to say, how is this going to impact you as a teacher in the classroom, was pretty critical to that process. And again, can the district reasonably implement what you are requesting? Are they going to be able to do it? Baby steps is important. You want to avoid making mass changes at once. If right now, there's every campus in your district has, Coke machines or candy machines or what have you, and all of a sudden you're going to pass a policy where all that stuff's going to be removed, that may be something that may be a huge undertaking. It's probably going to have a lot of backlash. So maybe just look at it, take baby steps. Maybe you can have a policy that says those machines need to have a certain number of healthier options, or concession sales is always a big one. You're not going to get rid of concession sales, especially in Texas. Football programs drive by their concession sales. I mean, they really utilize that funding. And so saying we're not going to have that anymore is going to be a problem. But if you can pass in your policy, at least half the items offered need to be a healthier choice, then that's reasonable. And I think that's something that people will be more willing to accept by taking those baby steps, saying we're not going to ban everything, we're not going to outlaw everything, but we want some healthier options provided. Those are baby steps that people are more willing to take a look at. And again, like I said earlier, think about those unintended consequences. We don't intend for our recess policy to prevent kids who choose to maybe read a book under a tree every once in a while. We clearly want them to be active, and we think that's important. But there may be a time where a kid, you know what, I'm just not feeling good today. I just want to go read under a tree. We don't want to eliminate that entirely. So we want to make sure we avoid those unintended consequences. And again, that TASB worksheet can help you look at all those points. And also it will help you sell your policy. You know, if your school district or your board trustees ask a specific question, why is this in the policy? You can refer back to that worksheet and say, well, this is the TASB recommendation of the areas that we need to address, and this is why that particular area is being addressed. So using that worksheet to your advantage, it could be very helpful.
Okay, John, thank you. I mean, that was an excellent presentation to let everybody know kind of how things work. One of the things to remember when you're using a template like what TASB has developed is that it's a template, and you still should be reviewing and developing your own language and your own policies. When the first round came about, Action for Healthy Kids worked with TASB on the templates, and what happened was the districts developed the policies through the template and then just put them on a shelf, and that's why USDA came back and said we need implementation plans. So now you have policies which are the general overview of things, but then the implementation plan is actually how things should happen and what the specifics are. John, do y'all share your wellness policies on your website?
Well, it's available through that district, the statewide policy manual that's online. We had that online, yes.
Well, yeah, the TASB, it's
yes.
available through TASB, but that's only available to the district personnel. That's not open to the public.
No, ours is. We have a link on our external site where you can click on policies, and they can go in there and see not just our wellness policies, every policy that our district currently has in place is available for public review.
Excellent. Okay. All right. If there are any other questions, I don't have anything in the question box right now. We have a few extra minutes. It's 12:15. Let's see.
So I see a couple of things in the chat here. So we as district personnel, we help support SHAC, and any recommendation that the SHAC would make, then we help facilitate going to the board with that information. We submit the information and meet with our legal counsel along with our SHAC chair, for example, would come with us. Our SHAC chair will not have access to our legal counsel directly, but like myself and our SHAC chair, I would make the appointment with our legal counsel. I would be a part of that meeting as a district representation. So it's kind of a team effort there. That's how our district does it. I think it's probably similar across the state.
And then the website is the Texas Association of State Boards of Education. That is only open to the district personnel, but El Paso has made a direct link, and I believe Austin ISD has done the same thing, so that if you go to the school district website, they have a link that takes you to the policies.
Yeah, ours is located under our board information. There's a link to policies through the board.
And this is Helenka from the Texas Department of Agriculture. On TDA's webpage that we put the link up there, squaremeals.org/local wellness policy. There is also a link to those TASB documents there. And as soon as TASB gets the updated version done, we'll also be including a link to the updated version.
Okay, yeah, somebody just searched and it says it's blocked for now. So I'm sure as soon as they get those updated, I can share the previous templates if you're interested in just looking at those. They're not going, the newer templates are going to be a little easier to work with. So I'd really rather kind of prefer to wait and share the new ones, which I think should be out. Did they give y'all a timeline yet, Helenka?
They're hoping later this spring.
Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Didn't have anything more specific. Okay. What strategies have you implemented to move forward on the SHAC and the school on hot topic buttons, such as nutrition and sex ed, to give you a few?
That's why the SHACs are so critical, because I don't want to have to make that decision myself. I don't want to be the person saying this is our human sexuality philosophy and this is the direction that we're going in. I need that SHAC body to direct me. They're the parents. They're the ones who tell us what it is that they want their students to be exposed to and to be taught in our human sexuality content. So yeah, we have a specific committee who addresses that, and they take their recommendations to the SHAC overall body, and then we go from there. And there's a lot of discussion. Sometimes those human sexuality policies or recommendations will take the entire year, because it goes back and forth from the SHAC council back to the human sexuality committee. They want to make sure things are addressed and answered, and of course, there's both sides of each issue and everything in between. So it can be very, very long process, but it's a process that my personal preference is completely eliminated, because that body drives that process.
There's a question about rules and guidelines for executing meetings. I think the best resource for that is going to be the School Health Advisory Council guidelines on the State Department of State Health Services website. And that link is part of this PowerPoint, which I mentioned earlier. And they give you different ideas for meetings and how to best approach things. I know one of the most effective things that Austin did was set up subcommittees for all the different components. Now, they're not always all active at the same time, but there's usually something going on with the nutrition committee, the PE committee, the health committee may or may not have things, health services, but like I said, setting up separate subcommittees where you can bring in content experts and have a real discussion around things, and then bring that recommendation back to the whole SHAC for discussion is very helpful. There's a question about policy that associates health, wellness, and mental wellness. I know that a lot of districts have been formulating policies around social emotional learning. I don't think those are not covered under the wellness policy requirements. The wellness policy requirements primarily focus on nutrition, physical activity, and family community involvement type things. So I think there's a lot more emphasis, and when we've talked to different school districts, they are considering those, but I don't have any good examples for those right now.
This is Ashley from It's Time Texas. I did just see a question about SHAC trainings and do we provide those? We will be doing a couple of regional workshops this year, one in Baytown in May, one in Garland, and one down in the valley, in the Rio Grande Valley. And the Garland and RGB regional workshops will be in September. So more information will be forthcoming on those. I realize those do not cover the entire state. So if you're in a different portion of the state, you can always email me at ashley@itstimetexas.org. I will chat that out to everybody. And then also, if you go to the It's Time Texas website, we host the Action for Healthy Kids site for the talk committee. And you can fill out information, send in a training request, and we can see where that fits with our capacity.
This is Michelle. We also do wellness policy trainings. So we're funded to do a limited number of those each year. And we can combine School Advisory Council / wellness policy together. And in fact, we're doing that in East Texas next week. So that's something else we can consider if we can get a large enough group and we have the funds. Are there any other questions? Somebody's asking how to see the questions. You should have a Q&A button on your control panel, which would allow you should click on that and you should be able to see the questions. This is, like I said, again, I'm fairly new to this, so I'm not sure I have all the answers.
I think some of the questions were submitted to all panelists, and some were submitted to all panelists and attendees. So that's why not everyone's seeing each of the questions.
That's I see that now. Yes. So if the questions are just submitted to panelists, then you won't see them. Good point. Okay. Any other questions? I think we've covered all of them that are up there right now. Okay. Well, I appreciate you joining us this morning. I hope the information we've shared has been useful. If you have additional questions, you can always send them to me, Michelle Smith at msmith@actionforhealthykids.org. And if I don't have the answers, I can probably find them for you. And we are always ready to help school districts in any way we can to improve your school environment, wellness environment. So thank you for joining us. We will do a follow-up email with a link to this recording, as well as a PDF file of the PowerPoint. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.